Okay, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to welcome you to hear a talk, a discussion with Rabbi Elie Abadie. And we really thank Rabbi Elie Abadie for joining us this evening. Rabbi Abadie is already in Dubai, and so the time over there is 11:30. So we really appreciate at this late hour for you that you're able to give us of your time.
My pleasure.
Well, thank you.
That's not so bad because next week I have a session where I have to be awake at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's with South America, with Mexico and Argentina. So,
so I'm just going to pin your video so we can all see you much better. So that's fine.
thank you.
So Rabbi Abadie was originally born in Lebanon and moved over to America, was the rabbi, I think originally in Brooklyn and then Manhattan, of the Safra Synagogue. He's very much involved in the Jews for Justice from Arab countries, and has recently been appointed as the new Chief Rabbi of the United Arab Emirates. And when I saw Rabbi Abadie is very friendly with Rabbi Dweck also. And so when I saw on Rabbi Dweck's status, I think on Instagram, congratulating Rabbi Abadie on his recent appointment, so this way I was able to connect with Rabbi Abadie and be able to ask you to speak to us. So thank you very, very much. If Rabbi Abadie can give us some information, describe a bit about yourself, and also to then go on to how you were given the position of the new Chief Rabbi of Dubai.
Again, thank you very much, Rabbi Elie too. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Yes, I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. My ancestry, however, goes all the way back to Spain, most likely Catalonia, Barcelona, and the Provence area at that time, which today is southern France. So when my family was expelled from Spain and after 1492, they kind of traveled and migrated from southern Europe. So it was, Catalonia, Spain, Provence, Italy, Greece, Turkey, and eventually Syria. That trip took over like 300 years. So by the mid-1800s, they were already in Syria, mainly Aleppo. That's where my grandparents were born. That's where my parents were born. And they lived as Jews in Aleppo, which was a very well-known city. In fact, I know you're a very, very, very former congregants in Manchester, the Catans. If you were, Ezra Catan and his wife and Jack Catan and his children, they happen to be actually my second cousins. So I know they're all
their relatives are over here.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes. In fact, my mother's father, my maternal grandfather, spent many years in Manchester in the teens, during right before World War I, and so I'm familiar with the area. So my family, as I said, migrated and lived in Syria. Then after the partition plan of the United Nations in 1947, the 29th of November, there was a huge, I don't want to call it a pogrom because in Arabic and Middle East that term is not used, but it was an uprising against the Jewish community throughout the Middle East, and certainly in Aleppo. 3 days of pillaging, killing, looting, burning, destroying Jewish property, synagogues, and attacking people. So my parents lived next door to the synagogue, and they saw how the mob went in, set it ablaze, took out Sifrei Torah, Torah scrolls, Chumashim, Sidurim, and burned them, and they also expelled the rabbi from there. So that was a turning point for the Jewish community in Syria. And from there on, they started migrating. Of course, the doors were closed. They had to escape. They escaped to Lebanon and they settled in Lebanon, as at that time Lebanon was under French mandate. Later on became independent, but the Jews lived fairly comfortable in that country. That's where I was born, and we lived there till I was age 10. However, at that time we started realizing that Jewish life in Lebanon did not have much of a future. We recognized that the population there was becoming unbalanced, given the religions, the ethnicities in that country, and we knew eventually that Lebanon was going to succumb to a civil war. So we left. We left in 1971. My parents had already prepared with my oldest siblings that they had traveled outside of Lebanon, like many of the Jewish communities there. They established communities in Brazil, of course, in Mexico and New York, a little bit in Paris, and of course, many of them went to Israel. But the turning point, or the event that really sped our exodus from Lebanon, and I'm mentioning this because that has to do with my position as a co-president of Justice for Jews from Arab countries. I'm very interested in that. So the event that happened that sped our exodus, our leaving Lebanon, was one day the picture of the Bet Din, which included my father and two other rabbis. My father was a rabbi, as I said. That picture was taken at a wedding, at a Jewish wedding, and must be that the photographer was the one who spread that picture. So the picture was enlarged and put in all the mosques in Lebanon. And then an article was written in like the Time magazine of Lebanon at that time. And under that picture is a famous picture, has been circulating around social media in the last several years. And under that picture, there was a caption saying, "These are the Zionist agents who are helping Jews go to Israel and helping Jews from Syria escape to Israel." And I'm sure you know that a caption like this in a country that was at war with Israel, with the presence of Arafat and the PLO guerrillas already in Lebanon by then, basically made you a target for assassination, target for bombing, and that was not anything strange to that region, unfortunately. So that really event scared my father and scared the entire Jewish community. So that sped our leaving Lebanon. So we left in 1971, but we left to Mexico City. My oldest brother has been there already since 1965. My father had sisters there since the 30s and the 40s. And so we settled in Mexico City. That's where I grew up. I went to school. I went to yeshiva, high school. And once I graduated, my vocation really was to become a doctor, a medical doctor. Because I believed in secular education, to have a profession. And of course, I wanted to study Torah as much as I could, not necessarily actually function as a rabbi, as a congregational rabbi. My father was. I wanted to learn and study, but not necessarily function as such. But I couldn't go to medical school in Mexico City, even though I was accepted to two most prestigious schools, because they had laboratory and testing and everything on Shabbat and Yom Tov, and I was not willing to compromise my religious upbringing and education. So I discovered an institution in New York called Yeshiva University. And so when I saw that, I said, let me go there. That's where I could become a rabbi, I could become a doctor and respect Shabbat and Yom Tov. And that's what I did. I went to Yeshiva University, I became a rabbi, I obtained a master's in philosophy, obtained all the degrees that I was able to, as I was enjoying learning and really eager to learn. I received my semicha, and then I went to medical school. So even before I received my semicha, my first year of the theological seminar at Yeshiva University, I was offered a position of what they call it a kolboinik, a kolbo, in a small Sephardic congregation in New York. It's called in the Rockaways. where I could do hazanut, I could teach, I could do rabbanut and everything. That was, as I said before, I even became a Rav, a musmach. And I started over there while at the same time I was going to medical school. Now, in between, I went my first year medical school at the university in Chicago, where I founded the second congregation. The first one was in Bell Harbor, New York. That was my first one. I was there originally. Then I went to Chicago. I founded Shaare Mizrach, the Gates of the East, in Chicago, a Jewish neighborhood that had no Sephardic synagogue. The closest was like 2 miles away. And it was far, and the winter in Chicago, they called them, very strong winters. So I founded Shaare Mizrach. And I was there only for 1 year, believe it or not, because my congregation in New York wanted me to go back. So I transferred back and I continued there. Eventually, I became a rabbi in Manhattan, New York. That was the precursor congregation of the Safra congregation. I was there for 7 years, of 8 years, actually. Over there, I met in person Mr. Edmund Safra, who knew my parents from Lebanon, who I had actually met while I was in the seminary in the 80s. I remember when he asked my father, "And who's this young man with you?" He said, "Oh, that's my son who's studying to be a rabbi." And the late Edmund Safra, alav shalom, said, "Well, we're going to need the good rabbis in the Sephardic community." And so that was just like a foreshadowing, I would say. And so when I became the rabbi at the Sephardic Minyan, it was a small Sephardic Minyan in the Fifth Avenue Synagogue in Manhattan. So Mr. Safra used to attend there when he was in New York, and that's when we met again, now more officially and professionally. And so he said, "I'm going to be building a synagogue for the Sephardic community in Manhattan, and you will be the rabbi there." So I thanked him very much, and he searched for several places. He took me to places to see them. He bought several, actually. He bought 4 different places, locations around the area to build it. Unfortunately, he passed away before he was able to build it, but the location was already assigned, and his wife built that synagogue. Now, in the meantime, it took years until it was built. So in the meantime, I decided I graduated from the medical school. I did my internship in internal medicine, did my fellowship in gastroenterology. In fact, I started having a private practice, all parallel to my rabbinic responsibilities. I enjoyed my rabbinic responsibilities. I think the congregations or the congregants found me to be okay, and so they kept me. And so I was never able, nor I wanted to disengage from the rabbinate, but at the same time, I wanted to continue being a doctor. So it had taken time for Mr. Safra to build the synagogue, so I decided, in a sense, to retire from the rabbinate, at least temporarily, and go into medicine, strictly into medicine. I had opened up my private practice, and it was thriving, was good. So I decided to move to Brooklyn. And then when the community in Brooklyn heard that I was leaving the city, going to Brooklyn, they insisted that I should become a rabbi in Congregation Beth Torah, and that's where Jack Katan is, my cousin. And so I accepted. I accepted to be a rabbi, at the same time continue my private practice and working in the hospital as a gastroenterologist. And I was there for 4 years. Now, my first year there, the Edmund Safra, alav shalom, passed away, and his wife decided to finally build the synagogue in his memory, in his name, and she asked me to become the rabbi. She said, my husband Edmund had promised you and had told you, and he instructed me that you shall be the rabbi, and of course I want you to be the rabbi. So by the time they finished construction, it was 3-4 years. By then, so I returned back to the city to lead the Edmund J. Safra Synagogue and the congregation. And I started the first Shabbat. We barely had 17 people. I say kemispar tov, 17. And thank God, with the wherewithal and the charge of leading it, I was able to grow it into a magnificent community, where we're not only just a synagogue, but we built a school and eventually a community center. And so I was there for like 17 years. again, all along, continuing my medical practice and getting involved in the community at large, not just the Sephardi community. Kind of the Edmund J. Safra Synagogue became the center synagogue of New York, where dignitaries, diplomats, ministers from all over the world that wanted to come and interact with the Jewish community, not just specifically the Sephardic, but with the entire Jew, they came to us, and that's how we led that community. As part of my presence there, as I said, we used to receive many dignitaries. A minister from the United Arab Emirates came to visit, I would say, less than 10 years ago. Of course, I spoke with him in Arabic. I welcomed him. I showed him some sidurim and written in Arabic. In Arabic, we have the halachot of the Rabbi Yosef Hayim, written in Arabic, right? So he was really fascinated, and kind of we maintained that relationship. I eventually visited the nascent Jewish community in Dubai 2 years ago, and kept that relationship and with the community and with certain officers and officials from this country. A year and a half ago, we brought a Sefer Torah to the congregation here, and I kept in touch with them, and they kept in touch with me. They continued consulting me for many things. And it was only, I would say, 2 months ago that they mentioned, they said, you have been helping us. We have been consulting you in many things. Why don't you just come and be our rabbi here? Be the senior rabbi of this country and of this community. And so I thought about it for a few days, not a lot, and I said, I would love to do so. I would love to do so. I enjoy building up communities pretty much from scratch, from bottom up, building the foundation of the community, the institutions that a community needs. And that's what I have been doing actually since my first congregation in Bell Harbor, New York. I started it basically, and then the one in Chicago, and then the one in the city. And so the only one that I didn't start is the one in Brooklyn, Bet Torah, which has been around for decades and decades. It was a pleasure and privilege to be there. And so that's what brings me here to Dubai. A beautiful country, a beautiful area where there are Jews here for the last few decades. Of course, I think the longest Jew that has been here is probably 20 to 25 years. However, Jewish businessmen have been here for over 30 years, in and out. It is estimated that there are approximately 800 Jews in the Emirates. Only 200, 250 are openly Jewish. The rest are coming out of the shadows now. Before that, they did not announce their Judaism, so to speak. Given the work that they did, given the area, they were not sure about it. But now more and more are coming out of the shadow, especially at the heels of the Abraham Accord. So my several visits to this country really intrigued me about it. I do feel, very comfortable here, given that I speak Arabic. I know the culture, I know the language, just the nuances of the language. I believe knowing a language is not just knowing how to speak it, to write it and read it, but the culture behind the language is very, very important. So I feel comfortable. To me, it's like going back to my childhood in Lebanon. This entire region has a very similar tradition and culture and language and food and so on and so forth.
I think at this point, I think it would be appropriate to show the people on our Zoom your message in Arabic, at least a minute or two, so they can understand the thing. So I'm just going to share the screen and actually note with the sound. So here is Rabbi Abadi giving a peace message to the people of the United Arab Emirates. Just hold on.
اسم اتحاد السفاردي الأمريكي أغتنم هذه الفرصة لأهني ولي عهد الإمارات العربية المتحدة الشيخ محمد بن زايد ورئيس وزراء دولة إسرائيل بنيامين نتنياهو على اتفاقيات إبراهيم والإقامات علاقات دبلوماسية كاملة بين مدينتهم. اتحاد السفاردي الأمريكي كان في الأمام العلاقات التاريخية والثقافية والتعليمية والدينية مع ابن عمومنا المسلمين. الاتحاد السفاردي الأمريكي وهو منظمة شاملة تمثل الجاليات اليهودية من الأدوار العربية في الشرق الأوسط وشمال إفريقيا. هو المحفز الطبيعي لهذا العلاقات وللتقارب بين اليهود والمسلمين. نحن نتشارك بالثقافة واللغة والتقاليد والطعام والموسيقى والتاريخ. نحن على استعداد لتعزيز هذه العلاقات ورعايتها.
Okay, I'm going to stop it now. I'm not going to test everyone to put on the chat what they understand. I think the main reason why most people won't understand it is because it was only blessings and not swear words or curses. So this way, had it been swearing or cursing, then everyone would understand fluently what was said. So,
Right.
But so yes, so in Dubai, what facilities are there currently, and what are you planning to create for the Jewish community?
Right. So up to the signing of the accord, there was a small Jewish community, and believe it or not, as always, there's going to be a Beit Chabad also, a small Beit Chabad, which is there, and there was a development of a kosher catering here. And now, since August until now, there has been kind of an explosion of kosher food imported and produced here. There is now at least 1 to 2 kosher restaurants in the area. There are every week at least 300 Jewish tourists, most of them from Israel, are already coming. And this community is really expanding significantly. The potential for Jewish tourism. I just had a conversation, 2 conversations with the Ministry of Tourism. Tomorrow I have it with the Minister of Tourism about how to make Jewish tourists welcome, where they can receive all the services they need, and not just kosher food, but spiritual help, synagogue, prayers, so on and so forth. So there are the ministry in this country is really gearing up to welcome the thousands of Jewish tourists that are planned to be here for at least in this coming year. These institutions are being established. Now, as the senior rabbi of the community, of the Jewish community here, I am planning to, as I said, really establish and build Jewish communal institutions. Of course, one of them, and very important one, is a mikvah. We're trying to hopefully build one. A formal synagogue, which we don't have. There's no formal synagogue building, but we have a place where we conduct our prayers, but as a standalone, not yet. Of course, starting a Talmud Torah for children. Tomorrow I have the first ever bar mitzvah in the Emirates that we're going to celebrate. We haven't had yet a Jewish wedding, but hopefully soon, God willing. And so, and then the establishment of a bona fide Bet Din also is in the planning of my strategic plan, and all the necessary institutions to make a Jewish life in this country to feel at home, to facilitate all what a Jewish life requires and necessitates. And we're going for that, and we feel very, very welcome by the government and even by the population. Many in the population in the street, you know, they say shalom and very welcoming and very really open to this new reality in the region. And so that's what we're trying to do, at least in the community, and to make the Jewish presence feel comfortable in this place.
I know there are many Israeli groups coming over. I know, for example, one of my favorite singers, Zion Golan, has organized, I think, an 8-day trip with Yemenites to come over to Dubai during the winter holidays. And already, I think, Pesach, there's lots of plans for different getaway holidays in Dubai for Pesach and other occasions as well. So when you said about...
Absolutely. To tell you that Omer Adam has been already here. He already he shot a video here, a music video of one of his new songs at the beaches of Dubai. The famous cantor Ziv Yeheskel, who sings beautifully Arabic songs and also Pizmonim and Piyutim. He's going to be coming within the next few weeks, most likely in Hanukkah. There is an entire choir of called the Mizrah, coming also from Israel. And Hanukkah, I think we're going to have probably 2,000 to 3,000 Jews visiting Dubai in different tours and different tours.
Wow.
So yes, all of that is in the planning.
I mean, one of the things I noticed on Instagram, following some of the Israelis, they were walking in the street freely with their kippot, going into the shuk, going into different shops without any feel of any security or any presence following them. There seems to be that comfort. Is any like extra security that you need, or is it? How is that atmosphere?
It does feel very comfortable and very safe. I'll tell you, I will feel safer walking down the souk here with the kippah, which I do, than in deep souks in Israel, especially in like the East Jerusalem and certain other areas of Judea and Samaria that are inhabited by the Arab Palestinians. It feels very much more secure. But I do have to say that the government of the UAE has a very, very sophisticated security and safety system. There are cameras in the streets. There are undercover security agents. A person can feel very, very secure here completely. So that is very, very well managed and very well taken care of. And yes, many Jews are walking down the street with a kippah without any hesitation and without any incident.
Do you feel the government of UAE has what to help with a peace process in Israel? And going back to your role for Jews for justice for Jews from Arab countries, do they have a role to play in trying to help those Jews who are expelled from their different respective countries just before and after 1948?
Yes, well, as I said, my role in the Justice for Jews from Arab countries is very well known here. I was vetted very, very, very clearly and with no problems or issues. I think that's an education that we ought to give everyone and everybody. In fact, there's going to be a conference on December 6th, organized by several international Jewish organizations on the topic of Jewish refugees from Arab countries, and the book of Lynn Julius, a fellow British citizen, right?
Yeah.
Yes, uprooted will be discussed also as part of that commemoration day. So yes, the government here welcomes these cultural exchanges. They want to know more about Jewish history, and certainly they want to know more about Jewish history in Arab lands. This area of Asia, the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, there hasn't been a Jewish presence for the last several hundreds of years. There was a discovery of a Jewish tombstones in Ras Al Khaimah. Ras Al Khaimah is one of the 7 emirates here in the United Arab Emirates. They did historical excavations, and they found a Jewish tombstones, which is believed to be from possibly the 15th century or so. Some say it's more probably from the 6th century. So at least there hasn't been a Jewish presence here for the last maybe 300 to 400 years. Mm-hmm. So of course the issue of Jewish refugees from Arab countries does not apply to this country at all. Yeah. Though we know that there was a Jewish presence here at the dawn of Islam. When Islam came to the world, there was a Jewish community in the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, very well known, tribes and so on and so forth. But there hasn't been it for many centuries. Mm-hmm. So they want to know more about it. Yes. Yeah.
I think in terms of tension in the area with Iran, is it felt in the UAE? Do people feel threatened?
As far as I know, at least definitely not in the streets. There's no such feeling of threat or of fear or unease. That probably is done at the political level, mm-hmm. not at the societal level. Though from what I hear in the street, there is commerce that takes place between Iran and these shores, and that is, I guess, it's understood and it's conducted usually. But no, we don't feel that threat, at least for me. It is the closest distance between Iran and the Saudi Arabian Peninsula is Dubai. Mm-hmm. It is the United Arab Emirates, the closest stretch. That's the stretch of Hormuz. Yeah. But no, we haven't felt any of that danger. I'm sure, as I said, the sophisticated intelligence gathering and monitoring is taking place every minute and every second of every day.
Yeah. What I'm going to do now is, before I open up to questions from everyone, I'm just going to play a special clip from Hayim Israel. Hayim Israel is one of the singers in Israel who actually was in Dubai, I think possibly only just a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And he also shot a music video over there. But he had a special video praying, saying the Hanoten Teshua LaMelachim for the royal family of the United Arab Emirates. So if you allow me just to share the clip, it would be very appropriate for us to play it. Rabbi Elie Abadie, can you see the screen?
I see it, yes. Yeah, okay, I see it.
So
yes. I've seen this video before, yes.
הנותן תשועה למלכים וממשלה לנסיכים, מלכותו מלכות כל עולמים, הפוצע את דוד עבדו מחרב רע, הנותן בים דרך ובמים עזים נתיבה, הוא יברך וישמור וינצור ויעזור, الشيخ خليفة بن زيد الأخيار وسكنوش لدبي الشيخ محمد بن راشد المكتوم بكل شلة شارع بريوت مسيخي كتر شلهم ملك ملخيم من أخي برقما يقيم يشمرن وميكون سراد يكون نازك يتسلم بيد براميم تحت رجلهم بيد بيلسونهم لفنين وبخل الشريف نو يتسليخوا ملك ملخيم من أخي برقما بيتن بلدبام وبليب كل يواتم مصرهم رحمنوت לעשות טובה עמנו ועם כל בית יעקב בימיהם ובימינו תיוושע יהודה ובא גואל יהי רצון שמלך מלכי המלכים יברך את המפקד העליון של כוחות הביטחון إيخود أميرويوت شيخ خليفة بن زيد النحيان بيجين الخيل إيخود أميرويوت إمكلتام وموزام بلدت اللهيب ليكسل بيمهم وبيمين وبرسو بيتشفون سكسوك بشلوم بالسلام بخن يراتون بنمر أمين.
Okay. Hold on, let me just...
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, this video was made before the signing of the Abraham Accords.
Yes.
Because there are certain mention, they did not mention Israel, V'chol Bet Israel, they mentioned Bet Yaakov. And it says, Tivasha Yehuda ve'Israel, usually in the text, in the regular text, is Tivasha Yehuda ve'Israel Ishkon Labetach. They skipped that part. So this video was, you know, it's amazing how things change in this area.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, we have quite a few Manchester City fans over here, and I think Manchester City is owned by someone from Dubai or from the United Arab Emirates. So I think what you need to make sure as the Chief Rabbi of Dubai, that you come along with the owner and you'd get him to also spend Shabbat with us, and then he making sure that it's for a Sunday game, and then then
with pleasure if you play. So that's the Manchester's. It's a team.
It's one of the teams. It's not the team that I support. I'm a United fan, but we also know how to be diplomatic, and if needed, we'll attend City games. We have actually one of our members is the oldest City fan, and he probably will know Vera Cohen, who was actually originally a Betesh, so a fellow Halabi.
Yes.
But I'm just going to change the view to gallery view. So if anyone wants to put their hands up on the screen or make a wave, so they can ask the questions, I can unmute. One of the things, did you know the late Eli Katan, so Jack Katan's brother?
So I'm looking at the questions.
Yes.
First from Perla Rubin, convinced to come, please do so. We would love to welcome you here if you can, and we'll show you around. Dubai and Abu Dhabi, at least both of them, are very cosmopolitan, pluralistic, futuristic cities with the skyscrapers doubly higher than New York or Hong Kong or Singapore. Yet at the same time, you see the charm of the East, the charm of Aladdin type of architecture and environment. So it's an interesting combination of the old and the new and the futuristic. Now, Dean Simon, I remember your grandfather Ezra Katan, alav shalom, when we visited him in New York, Brooklyn, in 1971 on our way from Lebanon to Mexico. We stopped in Brooklyn. We went to Shaare Zion. Your grandfather Ezra is the first cousin of my father. And when he saw him in the synagogue, they had set to meet. We were invited for Shabbat Kiddush and lunch at the home of your grandfather Ezra Katan. I do not recall Eli, your father Eli alav shalom. I do not recall him. I was young, but I remember very well your grandfather, because he was sitting with my father and hugging and kissing and discussing. They know each other from Aleppo. But I do know your uncles and aunts, Jack, Joe, and all your aunts, the ones living and married to Azar, the ones married to Hanono, alav shalom. Also, I know the whole family and their children and grandchildren. So after all, Jack is my second cousin, which Eli, your father, would have been also my second cousin. So you're my third cousin. Well, actually, second cousin once removed, to be more accurate.
I'm sorry that I didn't know that you were going to be, I did know you were going to be speaking, but I didn't know the family connection. Otherwise, I would have got Joey and Jack and Sylvia and everybody to come and hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, it would have been lovely. It was a wonderful talk.
Thank you. I think it's being recorded, so probably you could send them the link.
Okay.
We'll
I'll do that. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So the question, Danny Wolfson, the question is the synagogue near center of Dubai, the tourist area? The answer is no. However, minyanim are being organized in certain hotels. I mean, for example, this past Shabbat, there were services in 3 different locations. Because Dubai is a very large city. It's a almost 40-kilometer length, right? And maybe 10 kilometers width. But it's the length that really makes it very, very, very long and very distant. So, as I said, this past Shabbat, we had services in 3 different hotels. And probably Shabbat will be the same also.
So, I had a question from Bob Mor-Yosef. He's WhatsApped it to me, but I'm going to unmute Bob to ask the question. Yes, Bob. Sorry. Wait a minute. Yeah.
I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Good. I would love to know the view of the man in the street towards the Abraham Accords. Are they happy about it, or do they feel like it's something their leadership has done without their consent?
Well, from what I have seen, they're happy about it. But let me tell you, the population, the demographics of the United Arab Emirates are very, very significant and particularly different than many other countries. The United Arab Emirates has 20% of their population is Emirati, and 80% are foreign worker, or known here as expats. From what I understand, many of the expats, if not the majority, do support the peace accord. Many of those expats consider the United Arab Emirates as their country, even though they were not born here, but they have been here for many years, working, helping in the economy, construction, and in every single area of human endeavors. You have these 8 million expats living here, participating. And the official statement from the country that was told to me is that when they signed the peace accord, they thought that 50% of their population will be for it, and 50% will not be for it, or will not oppose it, but they will not be supportive. They did a poll, and it showed 85% of their population supported the accords. They were jumping for joy to see we did the right thing. So they believe that their decision was the right decision for at least 85% of the population. It's behind them and supporting it.
Another of the questions, is it possible to get kosher food in any of the hotels or to have it delivered to the hotel?
Yes, the hotels received instructions from the government that they must make kosher food available to their guests. Now, at the Grand Hyatt, for example, there is a kosher restaurant, period. So you could eat in that kosher restaurant. There's breakfast and there is lunch and dinner. On Shabbatot, as different services are done in different hotels, of course, you're going to have a Friday night meal and Shabbat lunch meal and tea and coffee the whole day. It's all kosher. There is a kosher restaurant separate from the hotel and near Burj Al Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. There's a freestanding kosher restaurant there. And more and more kosher food is becoming available to anybody. You just need to request it either before you travel, make sure that you're near that neighborhood, or when you are there, let know your hotel and there is a catering service. There's 1 or 2 catering service already that they will make food available to you in any hotel that you are. The hotel will make sure to get it for you.
Okay. So I think I'm going to really thank you so much for giving us of your time, of explaining things in Dubai, and I think there'll be quite a few new holiday makers going to Dubai. I think certainly if there's any rabbinic conferences within the Sephardi Rabbanut, I know there was one in Israel which was organized with Mizrahi. I think they should have one, make sure that it's done in Dubai. And
God willing, we will do one, and you'll be hearing about a lot of events going to take place here in Dubai.
Lovely. Oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I'm going to unmute everyone, so everyone can also wish good evening, and have a very good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure and an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording.